From the perspective of aromatic medicine, of course, we're thinking about how can essential oils benefit humans, how can they benefit us, how can they do things for us. But it's really important, I think, to get a fuller holistic sense of things by thinking about why do plants make essential oils in the first place? And when we ask that question, the answer comes back very quickly. They make them for their own metabolic and physiological purposes, of course. So we can go into a few examples of those so we get a sense of the range of essential oil properties for the plant themselves. First of all, remember that they are types of secondary metabolites. So the plant is making nutrients, perhaps as well as these secondary metabolite compounds. So we have that sort of broad spectrum way of thinking about them. And then these secondary metabolites have to be there for a purpose in the plant. We'll go into some of those purposes, but we should also note then, how does it come that if the plants are making essential oil compounds for their own physiological metabolic purposes, for their own, to enact their own being, as it were, how can they work for us? Well, we have a lot of the same kind of needs. So plants can make certain essential oil compounds to be antimicrobial, as we've mentioned, like the phenolic compounds, and we can use them to treat infections in our cells. But the plant is making phenolic compounds because they can also get infections. Plant pathology, including plant infection, of course, can happen as well. Plants get sick, plants get ill, not quite in exactly the same way as humans. They're different entities, different organisms. But by our coevolution with those plants and our hominid and hominin precursor species that come before humans, as they have co-evolved with plants, they've learned, as Timothy Johns, the ethnobotanist, has said, we have learned to make plant compounds part of our internal ecology. And that includes the essential oil compounds. So if essential oil compounds can act as sort of hormonal agents within the plant, they may be able to do that within ours. If they can act as defense mechanisms, they may be able to do that within ours, and so on. But let's get into some examples about how the plant uses essential oil components for its own purposes, if you like, to manifest its own destiny, as it were. We mentioned defense, that plant compounds, including the essential oils, can defend for the plant against infection, against microbial damage. So we can then use that property. Plants are also making essential oils for attraction and repulsion. So to attract pollinators, to attract insects when they're ready to pollinate and spread seed from plant to plant, so germination can happen and reproduction can happen. So there's a sexual dynamic, if you like, an erotic element to essential oils, that there are a number of essential oils that we use in that way as humans as well, in terms of their sensual activity or in sexual fatigue or in sexual enhancement, this action known as aphrodisiac action. So for example, oils like rose and clary sage used in sensuality and sexual engagement as erotic, meaning to have to do with eros, the life-affirming principle in humans. So plants are using essential oils for that kind of attraction. Interesting enough, we can use them in the same way, some of those compounds. But there's also repulsion, which we may not want to use so much for ourselves, in fact. The plants are also trying to defend against microorganisms, trying to defend against certain insects, trying to defend against certain herbivores, mammals that eat plants, at least until they're ripe and ready to be eaten. When the attraction thing comes around again, that mammals might be attracted by certain smells from plants, the smell of a ripe apple, a ripe lemon, a ripe orange, in order for the mammal to eat those seeds and then to spread them out and help the reproduction of the plant. So attraction and repulsion and defense are key dynamics. There are some more specific things, so that some essential oils, for example, present in roots, can help to protect against frost damage, cold damage, that can help to make the roots drought resistant, to retain moisture and so on. So those things are not quite so transferable to human beings, but may still work out to have roles in our physiology nonetheless. So plants are making essential oils for a reason, to do with the basics of biology, survival, defense from pathogens, including infections, for surviving through tolerating extreme cold weather and so forth, and through attraction, leading to reproduction, the spreading of pollen and so forth. So essential oils have a very rich and dynamic life within the plant, and that richness and that dynamism transfers very much to when we use them as well. To move on then from a broad sense of why plants make essential oils and what roles they play for them, let's move on to just giving at this stage a broad sense of flipping it back to the human side, a broad sense of the range of effects that essential oils can have for us therapeutically.